There's part of me that's like living in conflict about whether or not I could really be a prophet or not. But like the things that I understand about prophets were like, the prophet Jeremiah, he was selected for prophethood before he was even born. So that's one thing that I've got, like, that I know, like I was selected for prophethood before I was even born, like before my grandfather was even born. And but one of the things that I've got working against me is that all the prophets were all well studied in the Talmudic scriptures that they had at their disposal, with the exception of Abraham, which is actually interesting because in the Quran it actually says, when they tell you, when they attack you over not being a Jew, you should say to them, well, what was Abraham? What was Abraham? Because Abraham was actually not a Jew. Abraham was actually the patriarchal figure in Judaism that spawned the tribes, and he also didn't have the Talmud at his disposal, but he did have monotheistic faith. And so there's all these like little loopholes and things that kind of make it so that maybe there's a possibility that I'm a prophet. But like the challenge of Job, even though I don't have all the knowledge and I'm always getting all this bad information, there's still a chance that it's part of my challenge. And if it's not Jews and Muslims that are doing this to me, then it is the pagan cults and the Magi and the Roman Catholic Church and the American government. But to say that I'm not a prophet and that it is not God that has stirred me into action is also to say that the Jews and the Muslims' God is not God. So this thing that is happening to me is not happening to me because of God, is what you'd have to be saying in order to say that I'm not some kind of messenger or contender for prophethood. And there's this part of me that feels like I really am being called by the voice of God to Judaism, to help kind of speak out against Christianity and Catholicism and speak out against it, because apparently Christianity and Catholicism was not only meant to enslave a spiritually concerned demographic, but it was also intended to be demasculating of the Jewish people, because they imposed the Egyptian figure known as Osiris upon the Jewish people. But the Jewish people in no way would ever indulge idolatry, so they don't have any intention of being purely emasculated by literacy, which is good for them, because I don't have any intention of being purely emasculated by pure literacy either. But being literate is important, and it's something that I have, and it's something that I plan on working with and doing more with, and the same goes for the Muslims. The Muslims weren't just emasculated by literacy. The Muslims, there's some pretty impressive people that came out of the Muslim people that were Muslims. I've been like kind of thinking a lot about Mushashin, and I kind of like even though they do have something of a treacherous past, and even though they've done a lot of things that weren't good, Islam kind of has like this pattern in the caliphhood where it's someone's in charge for 2 years and then they get assassinated and then they're replaced by someone else who gets assassinated, and that kind of seems to be the track record with a lot of these roles in the Islamic world. And it's not funny, it's not something that I'm laughing at, like what losers or anything like that. Like, it's something that's kind of it's just something that just kind of happened. And I honestly believe that it was the Islamic tribes that discovered that by making something illegal, they could turn around and charge 2 or 3 times as much for it as they normally would. And that's part of the reason that I feel like maybe, if they did something, in error, or their predecessors did something in error, I don't think that a Muslim man would not, willingly be held accountable, because Muslims, I believe, I do believe that Muslims in some sense are righteous, because I don't believe that somebody who reads those things and believes in God and believes the ideas of God, or the ideas and philosophies behind the Talmud and the Quran, would not be willing to be held accountable for some of the damage done to the world or to people. And the truth is it's kind of weird, because it's just like, you look at these Magi and the Mushashin and these Arab cults, and then you look, they've got like these vast amounts of wealth, but you look at all these Muslim countries, and you look at all these, you look at Yemen, and you look at India, and you look at Africa, where they say that the Magi are from, and they're all living in poverty. They're all poor people, which means they're either really good about being low key and really good about keeping it on the down low, or they have no intention of helping the people that they originate with, or that they're attributed to or related to or whatever. But I'm going through a lot. Like, it's obvious that I'm going through something. I mean, everywhere I go, I've got an entourage of FBI agents, military officials, gangsters, police, CIA agents, probably military agents. These people are just so good. I mean, they took over the world. And they're just so good at maintaining, their positions, and so good about damaging me without anybody really knowing or anybody really noticing. It's just it would probably be something of a miracle if anybody that really worships God knew exactly what it is that I just been through, and it's something that I don't necessarily think is not true, because I like I said, I believe in the Talmud and the Tanakh, and there's a psalm that says, is it a psalm? I don't even remember if it's a psalm now. My memory is also not very reliable. And but anyway, there's this line where it's just like this: he who fashions the eye sees, he who fashions the ear hears. So I have faith that even if the Jews that are connected to the Magi have all been corrupted, and every Jewish leader in the world has been corrupted and is a pagan idolater of some sort, that David's chilling in a streamlined time-traveling UFO that has even better cloaking technology than these people have at their disposal, just watching, and watching as everything that happens, because it's I believe in the Messianic era. I believe in the Day of Judgment. I believe that something's happening. I mean, that's what these books were trying to tell us, is that, hey, something's going to happen. It's like a really big war, and there's going to be all these things that change, and there's going to be all this stuff that you guys learn and find out about that you guys didn't know of before. And I guess I was one of the things, and one of the things was that there's absolutely no way that there was a descendant of David who was crucified, which means that Christianity is just a complete mess of lies, which is what these people really don't want other people to know. I mean, there's just absolutely no way that there was ever a descendant of David that was crucified on a cross. So Christianity is basically just a fabricated lie. And not only is it a fabricated lie, but it seems to be something that was created by the Magi of this modern day and era for the sole purpose of attacking King David or his descendants, or attacking the Jewish people. And so my life gets terribly complicated. And I know it might sound like I'm bragging, but I'm basically also connected to a bunch of time travelers that go back in time and maybe not just selectively breed us out of monkeys, but also initiate Islam and Judaism and Christianity and probably Hinduism and Buddhism as well. But as I understand it, Buddhism and maybe even Hinduism are something of a threat to the Jewish monarchy that intends to liberate these people who have been enslaved using the ghost technology and genetic engineering. Because that's actually what they've been doing, is they've been demasculating every man on the face of the earth by taking their DNA, genetically altering it, and inseminating their wives and their girlfriends with genetically altered material. And I guess the reason that there's a lot of people that aren't so concerned about it is because when they engineer them, they're a little bit more attractive, or they're like, taller, or maybe more robust or whatever. But we really have no idea what these people are doing to our brains and any other part of our anatomy. And the truth is I've seen some cases where there's people that have been born with genetic defects, and it's just it's really depressing, because there's people that are like born in wheelchairs, or that don't have athletic ability because of the genetic defects that they've suffered from, and they're genetically engineered. Like, somebody engineered them to be that way, and that's just it's really messed up that they do that to someone. But anyway, I've been trying to do my best to let people know that they're being genetically engineered, and they're being watched, and they're being influenced into doing gross and disgusting things. And the truth is there's a bunch of people that are completely okay with being engineered, but they don't realize that they're being engineered to behave more promiscuously, or maybe they're not as smart, or maybe there's certain parts of their brain that are diminished because of psychic influence and psychic ability. And the truth is that I kind of realized that I'm kind of slow, and something about my voice sounds a little deep and awkward, and so I've been led to the conclusion that the reason that is there's a part of my brain that is being inhibited that makes me sound deep and goofy and makes me kind of sloppy and forgetful. But it might not just be psychic influence. I believe that there was probably something that was put in the vaccines that they were giving me when I was a kid. And it might not be that, but I started telling people that, that there's a chance that there's putting things in the vaccines, that the state mandated vaccines that they're, giving our children. And the truth is I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I only know from my own personal experience. And my own personal experience is that I don't think that it's psychic influence, because it's not psychic influence. I can tell when they're influencing me using psychic ability, and it's not consistent. It'll be just spurts of dumbness, just I'll leave something somewhere, or I'll forget something that's really important, or I'll all of a sudden it'll dawn on me what time it is, and I'll jump up and I'll go and do something without bathing or washing my hands or doing something, just doing the wrong thing. And that's not really what this, my deep voice is always with me, you know what I mean? It's always there. My deep voice and my awkwardness is just always there. It's not something that goes away, or that's, flickering on and off, according to some, American soldiers' will. And I'm just not convinced that they're not putting something in the state mandated vaccines, because obviously they're trying to make sure that people aren't as interested in education, and they make it difficult for, people of indigenous heritage or origin to be interested in things like school. And now it's to the point where, it doesn't really matter if you go to school or not, because you're not going to get good information, is basically the basically what I've come to understand is now, the typical norm here in America, which is really messed up, because I took a class on the Old Testament, and the teacher was trying to convince me that there was a prophet. And this was when I was in Santa Monica in California. It was a teacher at SMC, Santa Monica Community College. Teacher tried to convince me that there was a prophet that used to heat his food on human feces. And I was just like, at first, like, I believed it, because like I just didn't know, but like I just don't know what prophet it is that she was talking about now, because like I'm kind of familiar enough with the text to the point where I'm like, I didn't catch a prophet that heated. I shouldn't laugh about it. It's really not funny. But I didn't catch, any of the prophets heating their own food up, on human excrement. But the point is my instructors are not going to be reliable, and these people are doing everything in their power. I think because they feel like it protects them from my ability to claim prophethood, and it enables them to attack me, and it robs me of the capacity of being protected by a Jewish or Muslim community. Because obviously, well, they'll say it's like, oh, well, if he told you this or he taught you this, then obviously he's not a prophet, because those things aren't true, and prophets wouldn't teach things that aren't true. So I don't know how to go about this. I don't know, like, the best thing that I can do is like read the books that I read and learn from the Jewish people that I have available to me here in America, which, like I said, there's a chance that they're really not reliable, and that there's a big chance that they're really not Jewish, even if they have Jewish ancestry. They're descended from Jewish pagans or from pagan idolaters of some kind. And I just have no way of really securing myself or securing my my Jewish knowledge in any way. The safest place that I could think of for me right now would probably be Israel. And the truth is that there's some kind of operation going on where these people are getting rid of a bunch of people. Like, it's obvious that that's like kind of what they're setting up. And it's the reason I won't live in California, and it's the reason that I won't go to New York. And it's like rather obvious that a lot of the people that are in those places are, in some respect, expendable, and I feel like they're doing the same thing to Israel. Like, there's this part of me that no matter how badly I feel, like, I'll be safer there and safest there, and maybe I'll get good knowledge at a yeshiva university, that maybe it's really just loaded with a bunch of Jewish pagans that have no interest in being loyal to the God of Israel, which would kind of make sense, because everybody kept saying that Judaism is diametrically opposed to Zionism, and most of the Jews that are in Israel in one degree or another are Zionists. But I read this book, and it started talking about the establishment of the Jewish state. And I also read Theodor Herzl's Jewish state, Judenstaat. And I kind of understand the need for the development of the Jewish state. I mean, it happened, around the time of the Holocaust. It's something that was really terrible, and it's something that I, deduced or was taught or was informed of, was that the reason that they massacred the Jews was because there was this point in time where this Jewish conspiracy was also working with the Third Reich and the German government, and somehow they had some kind of falling out. They didn't agree about something. So what the German government and the Third Reich decided to do was, well, we're going to go to war with this Lucifer cult, but these guys are just so smart that we don't have any way of knowing who's Lucifer cult member and who's not. So rather than try to weed them out, what we're going to do is we're just going to kill all of them. That sounds like a good idea. We're just going to kill every single one. Women, children, and so that's kind of what I believe happened to the German people, and that was why people were so good about convincing everybody that the Jews were really the problem with this place. That's basically what they convinced everybody was, the problem with this place is that the Jews are the reason this place is so messed up. But the Jews are the reason that we're all slaves. The Jews are the reason that, the economy is going to fall, and fail. Jews are the reason that Ben Brown has AIDS, okay, they're really good about doing those kinds of things. They're really good at convincing people of those kinds of things, and that's it's just I don't think that everybody has that kind of information, so it's kind of hard to say that I'm not something, you know what I mean? But it's just like, what am I, and who am I important to? Because those are the people that I need to rely on to be able to be successful in my endeavors. And I know I'm not the Messiah, so there's no way that I'll personally be able to free anybody. And that's the other thing. Jesus was not the Messiah. The Messiah was believed to liberate as Israel, and not just liberate Israel, as I understand it, but liberate the people of the world too. And there's no way that Jesus, of Christianity was successful in that. And the philosophy or idea that came from Jesus being the Messiah was that he died and suffered so that everybody could get away with all the bad things or messed up things that they had been doing. But that's really not the way it works. That's not so even if these people are successful in raping me and giving me more AIDS and more diseases and killing me, there's no way that they're going to escape the judgment that they bring upon themselves for the things that they've done, even if they're being influenced, because, as I understand it, a lot of the way that they are influenced is they're influenced based on their choices and based on the people that they are related to and the people that they spend time with. Because, if ever since I've been circumcised, I haven't had, there's all these, little things that kind of changed for me, and not only ever since that I was circumcised, but there's also the fact that there's no way that I'm being put in this situation where I'm getting this rather reliable information along with bad information. Some of the good information that I'm being given or things that I'm being shown is so to the point where I know I'm not gay. I know I'm not gay now because I've experienced it to the point where it's just I understand that those feelings were something that was being influenced. They influenced me to into feeling those things and into doing those things. And it's not something that's natural to me. And I was also influenced into coming on to married women twice, and I have no interest in women that are married, and I have no interest in having sex with people that have sex with their own children, because there's a lot of that going down in America. And I'm doing my best to deal with these situations and deal with these people, and I want there's all these messed up things that they've done to my family, all these things that I don't understand. They completely poisoned my grandmother when my father was young. He was young, he must have been 12, 14, and they poisoned her to the point where she was turned into a vegetable. And her husband, my grandfather, and my dad, and I guess some of his brothers were forced to take care of her. They used to have to bathe her and change her diaper and stuff, and it was just really messed up. Why I understand that they selected my family for the sole purpose of validating the Revelations prophecy, or trying to validate their religion, or their messed up pagan their pagan idolatry religion. But I mean, it was just so completely not necessary. There's absolutely no way that serves any purpose in any frame of mind to the Jews or the Muslims. Like I can't submit to someone who would do that and have it be like not serve a purpose. And let me explain myself, you know what I mean? They also killed my great-grandfather so that his wife would get remarried to some guy who worked for the Italian mob and ran my grandfather out of the house when he was like 12 or something. And that's, I guess, this is something that I'm assuming, that I'm kind of jumped to conclusions, but there's absolutely no way that he was capable of buying a farm shining shoes. So I assume, because it was around the time of the Prohibition, that he got a job working for the Italian mob, driving alcohol in from Canada. And that was how he was capable of buying the estate that he bought. And that's when he decided, I'm going to be a farmer. I'm not going to mess around with these guys anymore. And that's probably what happened. I mean, I don't really know how else a runaway during the time that he was a runaway, you know, this has been 20s, 30s, would have been able to afford to buy his own farm. And from what I understand it was actually something relatively impressive estate. You know, there was like no real way that he would have been able to afford, you know, working on the docks or shining shoes. There's absolutely no way that he would have been able to afford that. And so the point is that the Vatican's had my bloodline for at least since like the 1900s. So there's a pretty good chance that my bloodline stretches back even further, and it was still in the hands of this pagan cult that is responsible for the establishment of America. And at first, like, one of the things that dawned on me is like, maybe the guys came here and they brought it here and they intended to do that, but they didn't really want to be responsible for what was going to happen. So they figured out a way to make sure that the Vatican took over the operation. And that's kind of what it seems like is going on in America, is that it's the Vatican that's in charge. It's not really the Magi. The Magi give the Vatican the job because there's a bunch of stuff the Vatican doesn't want, or the bunch of stuff that the Magi don't want to do or don't want to be responsible for. And I still, like, that was what I meant. You know, it was just like the story of Job. When Job is challenged, you know, there's a purpose for which he suffered. Like, there was something that was happening that he didn't understand. And even at the end, he's like, God, like, why did you do this to me? And then he's like, well, who are you? You know, I'm God. You know, like, these things were meant to express something or explain something. And that was like the whole point of his story, was that it was supposed to teach the Jewish people something. And it was the thing that it was supposed to teach the Jewish people was that even though you follow the 10 Commandments, even though that you're circumcised, even though you're living a righteous life and you're doing everything right, it doesn't mean that you're going to be completely protected. It doesn't mean that you're not going to find yourself in a set of troubles. It even means that there's a chance you might get killed. And that was what the story of Job was meant to express. They didn't understand why, if they had the Ark of the Covenant and they were following the covenant and they were doing everything the way that God asked them to do it, why were they still suffering? Why were they going through these things? Why were they being attacked? Or why were they losing these battles? They didn't understand it. So there was this story that was kind of written to express this idea and to teach them that regardless of what you're going through, love God. Regardless. Whatever it is that happens to you, love God. It's just, you know, part of life. And that's like the way life is that bad things happen to you regardless of how righteous you might be. And I mean, me being a person that, you know, is, for in a lot of ways, not lived so righteously. I mean, negligent father, I've stolen from people. But as soon as I thought something was going on, as soon as I figured out that something was happening, I changed. And it was because of the stories in the Talmud. Because as soon as something like that is happening, what do? You don't just keep stealing. You don't keep fornicating. You don't keep harming the people around you to survive. You change. You figure out a way to make sure that, you know, you do everything as good as you possibly can to make sure that you're doing everything as good as possible. And that's like what I'm doing, you know, like I study the Talmud by watching videos by Rabbi Skobak. I'm watching like all the other Jewish videos that I can get my hands on. I'm even like trying to like watching like Jewish short videos on Jewish culture and Jewish people from England and Jewish people from Canada. You know, like I'm like really trying to do this. I really want to do this because I believe I have Abrahamic ancestry or Jewish ancestry. And even if I don't, there's this part of me that still wants to convert to Judaism and be an Islamic and Talmudic scholar. I want to learn Arabic. I want to learn Hebrew. I want to study under like, the great Jewish philosophical minds, great Islamic philosophical minds. Like I really want to like take this seriously and do this thing. It's part of the reason I'm going to Michigan, which I know sounds stupid because if they killed my great grandfather and they poisoned my grandmother, then chances are they could get away with poisoning me and killing me or surrounding me with people that are loyal to the Vatican. But the truth is no matter where I go, I'm going to be surrounded by these people. And even though initially I went to Mexico to die, there's this part of me that really wouldn't mind dying in Michigan because that's where my father was from. And I've got a thing for like mountains and rivers and beaches. Like as much as I kind of like the city, which is really like, oh, well, I like the drugs and, it's something about the city that's kind of like, I don't want to say charming. Well, maybe it is charming, the subways and stuff. Like, I mean, like being homeless and being around homeless people wasn't exactly like, fun, you know what I mean? But there's like, something to it, there's something to just being in the city that I kind of like, like I liked living in LA. Like I like, even though I was homeless living in Skid Row, I was like, no, there's something about it I liked, I was getting high the whole time. And that's part of the reason probably that I liked it. But it was, like one of my favorite things was, getting high and sitting out there on that beach. And I know that a lot of people didn't really understand what I was doing, or a lot of people like were like, well, why is he like damaging himself or whatever? But it was, I was being attacked regardless of whether people realized it or not. And as ugly and as horrible and as terrible as everybody was behaving with me, I guess I felt like I needed something kind of beautiful to hold on to. And I found that by getting high and sitting out there on that beach and listening to music, and sometimes there was no music, but like I would smoke weed and I'd smoke like fake speed, and I'd be out there on that beach, and like, man, like the beach would just come alive. Like the moon would be so beautiful, like the city like skyline would just like, everything just like was so amazing. And it was just like I found something that was like worthwhile like sticking around for. It was like, all right, I think I can put up with my life. Like, okay, my daughter got raped, I think I can put up with my life. It's cool, I can deal with this, I can do this. Like I looked around and it was just like the moon was beautiful, the waves were like, nobody's like really out there on the beach at night too, so I'm like sitting there by myself really, unless like there was like some ghost agents lurking me, which there probably was. But I was sitting there, on the beach, just like, man, just like, look how beautiful this is. Like how could I not just like